up next.
I wonder who that could be.
I know.
Find
The
out
tease for you, George.
Okay, we're going to get now to that growing fury over a high school athlete who was sentenced probation but no jail time after being charged with sexually assaulting 2 classmates. There are now calls to remove the judge who made the decision, and ABC's Lindsay Janis is here with the latest. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, George. An online petition calling for the removal of this judge now has more than 14,000 signatures and counting. The petition calls the ruling a slap on the wrist and says the judge is essentially letting a known sex offender on a college campus. This morning, thousands of online petitioners are calling for the removal of the judge who sentenced 18-year-old David Becker to probation instead of prison time after he was charged with sexually assaulting 2 classmates. At a plea hearing in June, Judge Thomas Estes siding with Becker's lawyer, who argued the former high school athlete had already suffered due to his actions.
There have already been significant consequences, collateral consequences, to simply being charged with the offense in the first place.
The judge adding that a harsher punishment would slam a lot of doors for Becker, whose lawyer described him as a model student who deserved to go to college.
He was a rising star. Everything was going perfect for him. And then suddenly, April 20, 2016, he's at a house party. There's no parents, there's alcohol, there's marijuana, there's testosterone, there's estrogen. A perfect mix for a nuclear disaster. And he makes a bad decision.
Becker was arrested in April after 2 18-year-old girls told police they'd been drinking at a house party and went to sleep in a bed with him. According to police documents, each of them said they woke up at separate times to Becker assaulting them. Victim 1 told police Becker texted her after the incident, writing, "Very sorry about last night, was very much in the wrong." She replied, "Don't eat, it's all good." Later telling investigators she didn't know what else to say. Becker told police he was unaware she was asleep, and he denied having any contact with victim 2. Prosecutors had recommended 2 years of jail time for Becker. Instead, he got 2 years probation.
I think that the judge's sympathies were misplaced in this case. I think that this offender's college career shouldn't have been the priority. Punishment for the acts he committed should be the priority.
Becker's sentence of 2 years probation is being compared with the case of Brock Turner. In June, the former Stanford swimmer received 6 months in jail for sexual assault. George?
Okay, Lindsay, thanks. Let's talk about this now with Dan Abrams, Nancy Grace. And Dan, let me begin with you and explain a little bit about the process here. The prosecutors reached some kind of a deal, and they request 2 years of jail time, but the judge makes a completely different decision. How does that happen?
Right. So effectively in this case, it's not called a plea deal, but effectively he's agreeing to lesser charges. Prosecutors then come to the judge and say, okay, we've reached this effectively agreement. Here's what we would recommend. The judge then also gets what is a probation report. He hears from the victim's family. He hears from the victims. He hears from the defendant, and then makes this decision here. No question this is a lenient decision. This guy should be incredibly appreciative. I mean, this is a lucky young man that he is not serving time based on this crime. With that said, I think the fact that one of the victims said that she thought he should get probation was very helpful to him in this case.
Nancy?
Well, I disagree on so many levels. And what this is called in courthouse parlance is a blind plea. You agree to a plea agreement. You agree that somebody's going to plead guilty. And then you go before the judge, and both sides are blind. The judge is going to sentence. The state here recommended 2 years behind bars. The defense wanted probation. Now, the reality is the judge went a step further. He says, well, if you don't drink and you don't do drugs and you don't contact the victims in 2 years, the whole thing will be dismissed. It's like it never happened. And Dan is right about something. He said that one of the victims said, well, I don't want him to go to jail. You know what? I get it. She is feeling guilty, like it's her fault this happened to her. And I can't tell you how much that upsets me. I've dealt with so many rape victims, and they're like, wow, was my skirt too short? Should I have been at that party? Did I have too much to drink? Is it my fault? No, it's not her fault. One of the victims went out of state. Why didn't she want to go forward? That's why you have a prosecutor. You represent the victims. They're not supposed to go into court and handle their case themselves. You do do what is right. You lead the prosecution. And I think this case should have gone to trial. If you can't agree on a jail sentence on a rape case, then take it to a jury.
But it's very easy to just say this case should have gone to trial. We should have fought this, etc. But then what happens if he's found not guilty, right? And then there's zero accountability.
Then you did your best.
Okay,
that's
but you know what?
Happens.
Maybe that's not good enough. Maybe in certain cases the prosecutors are going to say, you know what?
Well, this
for two reasons.
Isn't good enough.
No, wait. For two reasons. Number one, maybe the prosecutors are worried they won't be able to get a conviction. And number two, maybe the victims said, you know what? We don't want to be dragged through a trial. We want you to reach an agreement. Don't just go on and just say, oh, you know what? They should have taken this to trial without knowing what's going on in these prosecutors' minds.
And another thing about this judge, he spent his whole life, practically 30 years, as a public defender. What do you think he's going to do when he gets on the bench? Side defendant. All he's worried about is his kid going to college. Really?
And now there are calls to investigate this judge, and we've also seen the judge in the Stanford case facing calls for removal as well. Become some of a trend here.
Yeah, first of all, I don't think you should tar this judge because he served as a public defender, and somehow that's the problem in this case.
I'm not tarring him. He made a bad decision.
Okay, wait. Look, I agree. It's a very lenient sentence here, but I think it's dangerous for us to start lumping these cases in together, right? We have to evaluate them separately, and I think Nancy would probably agree with me that the Turner case on the spectrum was worse than this one, in the sense that you had eyewitnesses, you were talking about the Stanford case, I'm sorry, an attack on the street, etc. You had the possibility of a lot more prison time, and I think that case was even worse.
Okay.
I don't know. Is one rape worse than another
what, Nancy,
rape?
What do judges do? What do judges do every day?
But I hear
every single day, judges have to make decisions.
Yes, they do.
Yes, right. So there's a spectrum. They have to make. Yes, there's aggravated sexual assault. There's not aggravated sexual assault. These sorts of decisions happen every day, and to pretend they don't exist is dangerous.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you both very much.
He's not even going to have a record.
We're going over to Amy.
I agree with her on that.
Yeah, they agreed yesterday. Oh, well, today's another day. Coming up on our big board, soccer star Hope Solo suspended over comments she made at the Olympics.